It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen and former Commanders beat reporter Craig Hoffman.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. I am Craig Hoffman. He is Logan Paulsen. And Logan, we've had a couple of days in pads now, so we can break it all down. The quarterbacks, how are they doing? How's the line play now that they're actually hitting each other? And this team has done a bit of situational football. How are they operating? Third down, red zone, goal line, et cetera, et cetera. Break it all down on today's show. Let's dive right in. Quarterback play, that's the biggest thing. Obviously, there's a multitude of factors that affect that, and we'll obviously have to talk a little bit about the protection before we dive deeper in it, or into it in about 15 minutes. We'll talk about the receivers and how they're doing. But when you look at the decision-making of the quarterbacks and hitting the throws that are there, how do you feel like Sam Howell is doing so far as the pads have gone on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole offense, quite frankly, looks a little bit better to me since the pads have come on. So, Sam's looking better. I think it feels like they're kind of, I won't say game planning because that's not the right word, but accounting for elements of the defense that they weren't counting for early on in the installs, or guys are just getting more comfortable with the plays that are called versus the defense. I mean, that's one of the things that I always found really helpful as training camp went on, is you get really good at blocking your defense, right? Because you see it every single day. You're like, oh, the tight end's to the right, I'm going to get a 3 technique, I'm going to get a 6 technique, I'm going to get the backer plussed over, this is how I'm going to hit this combination. You just get 1,000 reps at that. And so I think they've just gotten more comfortable. I think it started for me like last Friday. I want to say it was their first day of doing team run. They didn't have pads on, but they were running I mentioned on the show, like a lot of pin pull stuff. And I felt like the O-line kind of came to life a little bit, and I feel like they've just been getting better and better and better each day. And so, we were talking about before the show started, how you felt like the offensive line needed to come together a little run blocking. But when I watch it, I get the all 22, I get the end zone angle, I get the sideline angle. I see lanes being created. Now, are they perfect all the time? No, but I see space in the front, which is something that last year when you watched the run game, wasn't really happening. So to me, that's really good, because then it's just about, can we be a little bit cleaner on these combinations? Can we be a little bit cleaner with the back reading the runs out? So as long as that continues to progress the way it's been progressing the last 2 days, I think this offensive line is going to be pretty good. And so I mentioned Friday, Saturday, and then obviously today. What is today? Today is Wednesday.
Today is Wednesday. We've had 2 padded practices since the unpadded's on the weekend.
Yeah, so obviously there's been 4 practices. But I will say, since that run installation, the group has come together in pass pro a little bit better. You can tell they're starting to feel each other out. One of my favorite plays from today was Wiley was getting bulled by Casey Tuhill. The slides to the right. Gates does a great job overtaking the nose, and Cosme's he's kind of posting with his inside hand on the nose. Eyes to Wiley. He sees the bull, big chip help, kills the bull, perfect pocket to the right side. And then in that same breath, you get Chris Paul winning a one-on-one against Fedarian Mathis, and Leno winning his one-on-one. So, I just feel like they're starting to get a vibe a little bit with each other. And this definitely feels like, it's something we talked about this offseason. I know we're supposed to be talking about quarterbacks, but I feel like this is.
I was going to say, let's just shelve the quarterback for a few minutes, because we're in it now, and I don't want to lose a couple of trains of thoughts that have already left the station.
Yeah, and I feel like this is such an important part of Sam Howell playing better or looking more comfortable, and so I think that seeing that all come together, seeing that chemistry, because it's something we mentioned this offseason, was this is definitely going to be a group that's going to be playing better than the sum of its parts, and I think you're starting to see shades of that, which is great, because what are they, 7 practices in? So they've still got a little bit of runway left. Obviously, first preseason game next weekend, but I think they've got a lot of time. And, we talked about this off the air briefly. They are getting a lot of work done each and every practice. I think that's also kind of one of the reasons you see a very kind of pronounced progression with that group.
Yeah, so a couple of things on the O-line. You're 100% correct that from my vantage point on the sideline, never getting to hit rewind, watching it live, it definitely seems like the first team defensive line has really dominated some of those periods. And specifically, I think of yesterday's 9-on-7, which it's funny because they actually don't think they did 9-on-7. It's a 9-on-7 structure, if you will. It's a run period. There's no outside skill guys or no DBs, but I think it was actually 8-on-8. Like there's a safety that was hanging out in the back. Anyway, it was a run period.
Yeah.
And like it felt like John Allen or Daron Payne or someone was giving the running back a hug in the backfield every single snap. Yeah. And then, the 2s get out there, it's not quite as bad, and the 3s get out there and they popped a couple. But I do think that once you get into teamwork where like passes are on the table, play actions on the table, runs on the table, you have seen definitely a much more even distribution of wins. And that's how it should be, right? Like we talk about, I talked about this on the radio yesterday. The way I evaluate training camp is you first have to figure out, based off the setup of what you're watching, who's supposed to win the drill. And some drills are kind of designed for the offense. Some drills are kind of designed for the defense. If it's a team blitz period, the defenses should win more snaps because they're blitzing. And the offense doesn't know where it's going to come from, whatever. If it's, 7-on-7, it's slight advantage to the offense. And so, like, are the percentages right? And the most even 50-50 fair competition is when you're in a true 11-on-11 team period. And there definitely you're still seeing some tackles for loss. You're still seeing some sacks. You're still seeing, pass breakups and all that 100%. Kind of stuff. But you also see a much more – you're starting to see, I think, by the day, to your point, the offensive line get a little better. You see a couple of runs pop today. Curtis Samuel had some really good touches today. And obviously Robinson and Gibson and Rodriguez and Jonathan Williams continues to impress as well. I just think that, like, there has been some dominant stretches, which I think, honestly, I'm happy about because it gives me hope that this defensive line is everything that we think it can be.
Right.
But also, rep by rep, the offensive line is getting better.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, I think you mentioned 9-on-7. Like 9-on-7, having done that drill, is pretty much like a defensive drill. Like they have 2 extra guys usually in the formation, which is fine. And it's not always true 9-on-7. Sometimes you bring 3 tight ends. Sometimes you got a full, but you know what I mean? It's like,
sure.
But approximately, like, their goal is to be +1 in the run fit. And it's to make it hard for you. And so I will say that, like, while that drill is not always the cleanest, one of the things I really like seeing is guys, when when the defense knows it's a run, combinations creating movement. And so, like, sometimes they hang a little bit too long on the combinations, whatever, linebackers run through, whatever. But, like, seeing Chris Ball and Nick Gates, like, forklift John Allen out of a gap the other day was pretty exciting. Like that gets you fired up. And then we've talked about Wiley and Cosme and how they've been in the run game. And I think obviously, like, they're better kind of in combination working with each other, but they're so fast off the ball. Their get off is excellent, and like their ability to kind of close the space to their D linemen. So Payne in some situations, Sweat for Wiley, and kind of keep windows in the run game is really cool. And I think again, 9-on-7 is a run centric, or this defense centric drill. But when you get in a team run, even, which is like more realistic because you can throw it a little bit, like you see kind of, again, the holes are a little bit wider, the reads are a little bit slower, and the RPO stuff's there, the keeper game's there. There's some screens that they run in that period, and I just see a more efficient offense because as they've kind of rounded the offense out, they've gotten more efficient down to down. Like that's really what it's been. Like it's just they've just gotten more efficient as they go. So I think that's a good sign to me. And it's kind of like, in terms of install, that's what you want to see. Like it's going to be tough early on, I think, to be efficient, right? Because you're learning a new offense, and then to see that efficiency slowly ramp up, guys knowing where the target's going to go, the combinations being nice and thick. Juan Castillo and Terrell Wharton deserve a ton of credit, I think, because we were, I don't know, I was kind of concerned that they weren't doing run stuff in the offseason. And that,
it was kind of one of those things where it's like, we got a pin in it. We're going to watch and see if this was a problem, but it's too early to have already called it a problem.
That's a better way to say it. Yeah. And I think it shows you that offensive line development is not always in live periods. It's kind of like boxing or sparring, and for them, all that work they're doing on the side, all that work they did this offseason seems to be coming to fruition now, which is a good time to have it. So I think I'm pretty excited, obviously, like, pretty excited. I know fans will like, oh my gosh, Logan's excited, but it's looking good. The offense is progressing in a nice way. It's looking like a healthy offense. There's answers versus different looks. There's answers in the blitz period. Do they always hit it? No. Like today, Jacoby had a rep where it was like an A-gap pressure. He's got to hit the shallow cross, and the plugger just kind of gets in the way of the throw at the last minute. He has to hold it, and he has to throw it in the dirt. Like, that's a win for the defense, but the fact that there is an answer, right? That you can get to the shallow cross, even versus A-gap pressure. There was a corner blitz today, and they had an answer where they were able to throw the receiver right now, or they ran a wheel and they got the ball to the back right away because, they identified that it was a pressure look. So I think that's good, and I think you'd like to see maybe, as the offense gets a little bit more efficiency in the deeper stuff. But I'm every day has gotten better, and I think that's a testament to the staff and the players.
Yeah, I also like the way that they're constructing some of the stuff that they're doing. There was a period today where they went the split was we were expecting 1-on-1s, O-line, D-line, and then 7-on-7 on the other side of the field.
Yeah.
And what they did instead was cluster work on the skill position guys, the pass game stuff. So it was like 3-on-3, 4-on-4 type of stuff. And you're working combinations, and DBs get to work on passing stuff off, receivers get to work on their releases, and making sure if we're going to switch release this, we don't run into each other, and the spacing is right, and all those kinds of things. And then on the O-line, D-line side of the field, it was actually kind of the same thing, and it took me a second to realize what was happening, that it was really an offensive line drill, because I was like, it doesn't look like the defense is actually trying to win here. I was trying to figure out okay, is one of these guys a live rusher and it's a 1-on-1 and they, you don't know if it's going to be your guy. I couldn't figure out what the drill was for the first 3 or 4 reps. And it turns out it was a combo drill. And that's the kind of isolated work that I just haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And something that they never did as far as I can remember in the Gruden era.
It's a Callahan thing. Callahan used to do stuff like that. He called his a pod drill where it's 5v4. And essentially, it's the same thing. There's no linebacker in the game. So it's just literally we're working combos, D-line, good luck, right? Yeah. There's no one to come off to. So,
but it's super isolated work, and this is the time of year that you can do that stuff. And I loved it, and I'd have to think that it's going to help this team. And by the way, they were doing it for 20 minutes. These periods are long. And they're getting a lot of reps in at the same thing over and over again. And that's something that you and I have talked about, and veering off a little bit from the specific here, but that's something you and I have talked about, in your career, that there were times where you're just this is my 8 reps today. And these guys are getting a ton, even the threes are getting a ton of reps, which is just going to make sure that everyone's a better player because they've actually practiced.
And so that was something I wanted to ask you, because we've talked, and we'll talk more about this probably later in the week, just the volume of reps or whatever. But does the practice, because I don't get to watch a ton of practice because we're doing segments, we're walking around talking to people. So I don't get to watch, what does the cadence of practice feel like? Does it feel urgent throughout?
Yes, but it also doesn't feel rushed.
Yeah.
And the funniest moment of practice today, which was enhanced by the conversation that Nikki and I were having on the sideline while it was happening. So the referees were out at practice today. Yeah. And, Eric always kind of has the same cadence. It's, they break the huddle, get on the ball. Yeah. Ball is hiked, and go get it. Every single play. Go get it. I'm like, who's he talking to? Which guy? Who's the go get it guy? And then it's, get off the field. And he's making sure that it's efficient. But it's not they're running hurry up. It's just get off the field so the next group can get in the huddle. Right. Or if you're supposed to be in the huddle, get your ass in the huddle. But the officials were out there, and they had thrown a flag on a particular play, and they were in a little group huddle taking forever like they would in a real game to discuss, because I think there was multiple penalties, and Ron's kind of waiting on them. And eventually, Eric had, the players are used to the cadence. Eric had sent in the play. They broke the huddle. Referees are still kind of, lollygagging back to their positions. The umpire is whoa, we're not ready yet, sprints in to stop the snap. And Eric just obliterates the officials. It doesn't matter right now. We got another play to run. You can talk to us after. Get out the way. And it was funny because right before that, I had said to Nikki, as it was kind of taking too long, I was like, is Eric going to yell at the officials too? And sure enough, turns out the answer is yes. So to answer your question, it does not feel rushed. It just feels like a good, consistent tempo on a metronome of this is what an NFL game feels like. The play clock goes, the next snap happens, and you just keep doing that until the drill is over, or until your reps are over and you switch from the 1s to the 2s to the 3s.
Yeah, that's really cool to hear, because when you some of the more efficient offenses I've been a part of were like that. Practices were like that. There was an urgency. You're not rushing, but you're urgent, and I think it just allows you.
It's game speed.
Yeah, to get more reps in, to work your conditioning, to again, like we talk about the individual work, we've mentioned that already, but also like there's really no replacement for like being on the field with your guy, like working through in-game adjustments and being like, oh, that I was a little loose on that. I got you this next one. Here, let's go the play calls in. You know what I'm saying? And like, oh, hey, with the slides there, and just getting volume in time on task is so important. And the way to do that is make sure you've got a good cadence. So I think that's great. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that reward with the offensive line. Obviously the defense is still doing a great job. I'm not saying, but like in our earlier conversations about training camp, like the defense was dominant to a certain extent. Right. So now it's kind of evening out a little bit. The defense is still doing a great job. The defensive line is still doing a great job. The linebackers have flashed, like the secondary is doing great, but to see the offense kind of start to match that intensity of a defense that I think we both think is going to be pretty good.
Yeah.
Is awesome. So,
yeah. One thing that I really like that they did a ton yesterday. They actually did it a lot today too. I was trying to think, but yeah, they definitely did it today too, was mixing the ones and the twos. Both sides of the ball, but especially on the defensive side of the ball. And to me, that's something about the O-line, or something that's helpful for the O-line, because yes, it is very helpful to get better at football, to go against someone the caliber of John Allen every snap, against Daron Payne every snap.
But it's not really though. I think that's the thing.
But the thing is, like, I think what you were about to say is exactly what I'm about to say, which is that helps you actually get really good at blocking John Allen. Yeah. And the problem is John Allen's not Dexter Lawrence, and Dexter Lawrence is not the next guy. And so even if the next guy up is a Big Phil, is not as good as John Allen, or F.A. Obata is not as good at John Allen, it's a different challenge. Yeah. And so making sure that you're not just getting good at one thing and you're not just solving one problem, I think is helpful for this O-line as they figure out how to react to all situations, all personnels, all different types of rushers, all different types of guys in terms of how they play the run, and getting that mix and match, I think, has been really beneficial. And maybe it's actually been one of the catalysts for them coming together a bit as a unit these last couple of days.
I think that's totally true. I also think it's important to note, and you've probably experienced this in your life a little bit too, like if it's too hard, if the task is too challenging,
yes,
I can't work my technique or my rules or anything, because I'm just
right. Like, if I had to go try to block, like me, had to go try to block John Allen, you could give me infinite number of reps. I'm not going to get any better at it, because he just kicked my ass every single time. Right. And I wouldn't learn anything. I would just be in pain.
Yeah, and I kind of felt like that's what was going on with Sadiq. And so, like, it's weird to see, like, Chris Paul come in and play well, against John. But I feel like he had time with a little bit lesser competition to really hone in on technique and angles and positioning and punch and position on the double teams. And I think there is a lot of value there. So I do think it's great to mix it up. It's not exclusively twos. I think what they did yesterday was like 4 reps, like ones versus ones. And it was like 4 reps, ones versus twos, and they kind of went through that way. So they're still getting 1 versus 1 rep. But I do think that just taking a little bit off the gas pedal allows you to really solidify some of those techniques, especially along the offensive line, and see concepts in the back end too. Like if you're always going against a coverage group that's just locking you down or runs it exactly the same, like you said, it's not getting you better the same way. So I do think that's a really smart move by the staff, and I think it leads to a good constructive learning environment for the team, which ultimately is what this is. It's just it's like school. Yeah. It's like class, So I'm encouraged, and I think I will continue to be encouraged. And, I think Cleveland's going to be a really exciting thing to watch, just as a fan, to kind of see where the team is at and see how sharp everything looks. Cause like this is totally changed. I coach at the high school, watching practice every day with EB and how he runs it. It changes my perspective on how to maximize the teaching of a training camp practice. And I think that's a cool thing to see.
Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. That's Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. So we talk about the ones versus twos, the level. Is it too sharp? Is it sharp enough? Type of deal. And I feel like early on there was a little bit of that with Sam Howell, where it was a little bit too fast, or it was part O-line, right? Like they were not having a good time blocking the 1D line, especially before they get into pads. That means there's pressure in Sam's face and everything's happening a little bit faster, and you're not actually getting the best caliber of work where you put the twos out there, and they're still very, very good players. but they can actually operate the offense. So now that we've seen that offensive line take a step, how do you look at what Sam has done so far a week in the training camp?
I actually like where Sam's at. I think there's been as the offensive line has improved, like Sam has improved. I think, there's times where you see like just tremendous talent, like in one-on-ones yesterday he had a really, really nice throw to Diami where Diami's working against St. Juice. St. Juice is in the back hip. Diami's able to accelerate, maybe gain like a half yard of separation. He drops it over the shoulder right in the bucket. I mean, it couldn't have been a better throw. And so you see that elite accuracy, that elite feel, that elite touch. But also you see a little bit of the inconsistency in terms of teamwork. I don't know if you can see the throws over the O-line the same way, but I'd say the consistency down to down is definitely improving. I'm just saying occasionally you see kind of one of those flyers where you're like, oh man, that would have been awesome if he could just lay that in there. Like there was a corner route to Terry in the first team blitz where he's kind of using it as a hot outlet and he just puts a little bit too much air on it and Terry can't get there, or it would have been a big play. So like that and again, nobody's going to have a perfect practice. That's not what practice is for.
And that's the kind of stuff that happens in games all the time. And
right.
It's the one where we're doing the post-game pod. It's like, man, if he had just hit that one.
Right. And so I think if he can get if he can continue to get more consistent, and I do think that kind of changing the dynamic of some of those team run periods, like letting them see the RPOs, letting them see the keepers, letting them see the sprints, like that's been those are really high level completions. He's done a good job finding throws there. The red zone stuff, kind of that short area has been really nice. He did have a miss to Terry today that was kind of heartbreaking, but again, those things happen. Like the play design's perfect. The protection's pretty solid. Terry's on a deep crosser. He sees the window. So all the hard stuff kind of taken care of, puts a little bit too much air on it, and it just falls, kind of off the fingertips of Terry. And I don't think Terry could have caught it. So I think there's been a progression. It's good. It looks like they're kind of figuring out what he's good at, what Sam's comfortable with. And it's just about some of those long foul balls, I'll call them, where everything's kind of right. And can you hit that? And do I think it's better than last year? 1,000,000,000% better than last year. But I'm talking like, can he kind of take that next step? And that's the stuff you're looking at.
Yeah, just to clarify, are you talking the one offense looks better than the one offense last year, or Sam looks better than Sam did last year?
I think both, honestly. Like Sam looks way better.
When you said like the 1,000,000,000%, that's what
you're
talking
better
about
than better than like Carson, for example, or better than that
that's
efficiency.
What I was asking.
You know what I mean? Like that efficiency that we saw from Carson last year, where you're like, man, that was, there's only been like 5 completions in practice or whatever, and they've been big plays, but you can't survive that way. So for him,
right?
Yeah. So for him to kind of, and again, it's as much as we're talking about Sam, it's all the structure of the offense and EB and finding matchups and getting people in position to make plays. Like, you're getting B-Rob on a choice 2 days ago and he dices the linebacker. That's an easy throw, easy read, easy catch, So finding those matchups, putting guys in good positions to be successful. Again, there was a play, you get double posts to the right, deep crossing route, hits Cole Turner for an easy completion. Like, love that stuff. You know what I mean? Love how the concept supports Sam. Love how Sam's seeing it. So it's a really nice progression. Everything feels great. But, it's just, can he kind of ramp that consistency and I don't even know what the next level would be. I don't even know if we have something to compare him to in this market. But like maybe that Kirk Cousins level where like, you're connecting on 50% of those long foul balls as opposed to 30%. You know what I'm saying? Like, can we get that extra 20% of efficiency? And I think you will, and I think as you get in a game plan, that'll get better because the game plan, again, you see the same look versus different coverages and you get really good at it. But that's kind of where I'm at with Sam at the moment.
So the comparison to last year in Carson to me is just night and day. And again, this is quarterback, but it's also offense and attention to detail. But like, how many times did Carson drop back, pat the ball 1,000 times, throw a ball in the dirt? And you're just like, this looks disjointed. This looks not functional. This is bad. And you tried to hold your breath and just think that it's going to get better. And it never did. But with Sam, like things are happening on time. Like not always. There's been a couple of hitches. Like again, no one's gonna have a perfect practice. There's times where it's upset in terms of the timing because of pressure, whether it's a blitz period or whether someone just win. John Allen and Deron Payne occasionally win quickly. There's things that happen that you have to deal with that you're gonna have to deal with in game. But I think that is down in, down out. And what's so impressive is that even if it's an incompletion, even if the ball doesn't go to the exact right place, there's a timing and a rhythm to this offense that screams functionality. Yeah. And that is very exciting. And I'm hoping very much that translates into a game. I also think that there's been consistently players running into space. And that is very exciting too. And I think one of the areas where Sam can improve a little bit is making sure that the throws allow those players to continue running in that space. I think there's occasionally some throws where he is being a little too careful to throw away from defenders, which sounds crazy because obviously you want to throw away from defenders, but like just hit the guy in stride, man. Like you don't have to back shoulder it away from the defender all the time, because if you hit the guy in stride, he can keep running full speed and get past that defender. So there's been like a couple of those here and there. But largely, I think he's been very, very solid, especially the last 2 days. Saturday, I wasn't out there, but everyone, I was talking to Kime about it, for instance, in the end zone today. And he's like, yeah, Saturday was, yikes, not very good. But past 2 days, I think he's been a lot better. And, if he can just continue to grow, like it's also the time to remind ourselves that he's super young, very inexperienced. And, the preseason game against Cleveland will be the second time he's ever a QB1 in anything at the NFL level. So long way to go. I guess. Did he start the final preseason game last year? He did, right?
No, I thought
Baltimore.
Didn't Taylor start that game? I don't remember.
Maybe, I don't know.
It was
Someone
a year
leave
ago.
a comment. I'm sure everyone, the Heineke Hive will remember.
So I don't know. I agree. I think as much as I'm happy with Sam Howell and I think he's in a good spot, I think it's the offense that gives you confidence that everything's going to be copacetic. It's not like Sam needs to be perfect. It's there's opportunities and throws that are a little bit lower leverage than what you were seeing last year on a down basis. So I'm into that. I think Jacoby's looked really good. I think Jacoby continues to be looking good. I think the thing about Jacoby that gets you smiling when you watch practice a little bit is, for example, they were in a blitz period. And there was no good hot answer on the play, and Cole Turner had like a middle read, like where he's kind of beating the mic in a one-on-one situation, and we're talking like around like the 50-yard line, and he throws this ball that looks like it's 55 feet in the air, like just almost straight up, because the blitz is coming right in the A gap, so he's got to get the ball out on time, and he throws the ball straight up, and Cole Turner is running, and he's looking kind of for a normal trajectory ball, but the ball was out like it felt like 3 seconds before he turned his head around, and the ball lands like directly to the right of Cole. He could have caught it, but like, it's one of those things where it's like you're not expecting this like incredible moonshot, and he'll do something like that, once a day in practice where you're like, that's definitely not your hot answer here, but you're trying to mess around. Like he did something today with a corner route where like it was a corner pressure, and he just again lofted this sucker up there, and just hoping the receiver can track it down. And I like that he's kind of playing with that stuff. But in terms of like total mastery of the offense, I feel like he's a little bit ahead of Sam. But I think, again, you're betting on the upside and all those tools we've seen. And it's not like Sam's been bad. So, but those always make me smile when Jacoby's out there.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you about those plays, because like Jacoby just will roll out and be like, bleep it. And it's funny because his reputation is anti that, which makes you think that in games he probably doesn't do that, right? Yeah. You've probably watched more of Brissett. In fact, I know you've watched more of Brissett than me, so I'd have to rely on you here and your file. But like, it is pretty funny for a guy who's like, will never turn it over, super safe. Oh, he smart guy, will just flick it out of bounds. Not in practice, man. Yeah. That dude will roll out, and his arm is so freaking strong.
He's got a strong
arm. He'll just flick one 30 yards down, and it's like, it's twitchy too. It's just like this violent shoulder snap, and he'll fling a ball 30 yards down the field into the corner of the end zone, and you're like, that's an aggressive throw. Oh, there's a receiver down there.
Yeah, he had one. I think you're trying
to make a completion.
In 7-on-7 yesterday, it's like 7-on-7. There's no rush, so it's kind of like pat the ball, the good coverage, right? And he got to the backside comeback who had adjusted because it was off schedule and was running. It was Bryson Tremaine running down the sideline. And he like kind of languidly rolls out to his right and just bombs this sucker down there. It must have been 45 yards in the air. And Bryson goes up and, mosses the guy or whatever. But I'm like, that's, that's like, in no world is that ever happening. But like, it's cool to like, there's like a playfulness about it, but also like you can tell he's working on something. And I dig that. So good for him. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Let's real quick before we go into the situational football stuff, talk about the receivers on the tail end of the passing game stuff. What have you seen from the crew? And obviously we'll talk about DBs in here as well.
Well, it's funny. Like we started talking about Terry, how he's been kind of quiet, and then he comes out and has like a pretty explosive day. I think it was the days are mixing together. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. He had like a really nice fade kind of sluggo release on Emmanuel Forbes and catches the ball over.
Would have been Tuesday because they didn't practice Monday.
Yeah, so catches the ball over his shoulder. Again, Emmanuel Forbes later in the drive, later in the period, has a slant on the other side of the field. Great catch by him in a contested catch situation. So it kind of came out and said, hey, man, like I'm the big dog. Today had a nice catch on a crossing route that would have been a big play. So good to see him kind of, not that didn't show up, but, like he's getting some touches and getting his hands on some footballs and making some plays. I think we all know that he's going to do that when season rolls around. But
the thing I will just like underscore there is he's actually going to get touches. Like that is something that is a concerted effort to get the ball out quickly. We've seen it in the play calling, and they're obviously practicing these situations. It's not like you show up on Sundays in the fall and all right, hey, we're going to run the screen to Terry. Like no, they're practicing, and I don't know if they've run a screen to Terry yet, but they've practiced some like clear one read. The ball's going to Terry because we want him to get the ball stuff. And Ron talked about it in his presser today. So like he is actually going to get his touches this year, which is fantastic.
And like I think they had a jet sweep or revert. They've done some stuff like that. The other one that's kind of was nice to see was Curtis Samuel. Like he did a really good job with like some stuff from the backfield, some stuff from the slot with some screens, and had some nice kind of work in the middle of the field. And again, he was a guy that had been quiet for the past 5 days, but past 2 days kind of come alive. So, he gets his flowers. Jahan, nice day yesterday, just running routes. The thing I loved about Jahan yesterday was he was making some contested catches, which I know he's kind of known for having great hands, but Forbes during OTAs and minicamp was kind of able to, I won't say body him up, but like kind of be physical with him. And then the ball would kind of jostle out of his hands. So he made some, guy near him, good handsy catch, getting his arm hit, holding on to the football, which again, I think that's super important for him to kind of take his next step. If there's one criticism I had of Jahan's game is that he doesn't always finish the play. So to see him have some plays that were going to be tough finishes and he gets that done, I think is kudos and a big credit to him. And then Cole Turner real quick, I think has done a great job.
Good.
He's shown up and it's not like he's winning. Oh shoot. I almost just like yesterday, I almost said he doesn't win in man-to-man situations, but yesterday he had a choice route on Khalid Hudson and dude about fell out of his shoes. You know what I mean? Like it was an excellent route, kind of that basketball crossover at the top. Khalid kind of bites really hard on the out fake. And, Jacoby was actually late getting him the football because he had won so quickly, so badly. So, great job by him. A lot of crossing routes, a lot of deep crossing routes. So I think he's a guy that's going to be a big feature of the offense, especially using multiple tight ends and things like that. Any observations from you, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I think Curtis is going to be a guy who gets a lot of design touches this year. I think that is something that we're already starting to see. I think today we saw the most of it with him lining up at some different places. Again, don't want to say too much so we don't get in trouble. But, he lined up in the backfield. Ooh, shocking. Yeah. But some of the stuff that we wish we had seen a little bit more in the past, I think Curtis is definitely going to get some of those opportunities. Especially, I would imagine there might be games where it doesn't happen at all. Then the next game he gets 5-6 of those because it's the right matchup and EB's see something particular on defense. So that's going to be interesting to watch. I think week to week throughout the year. He did have I can't even call it a drop. He had just a one where he got all turned around. I don't know whether he lost it in the sun, whether he never saw it, but what would have been a big play. Yesterday. It was yesterday. Yeah. We had a big play against cover 2 over the middle, and he was wide open and just tripped over his own feet, turning around to try to find a ball that, had he kept running, I think would have just hit him in the hands. But got open, read the route, everything correctly, just got to finish.
And he won all of his one-on-ones yesterday.
Yeah.
good for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
He's
for sure.
I always forget how strong he is as a player. You know,
Mhm.
he's not maybe the most technically sound route runner, but he's physical, and so he can kind of create separation using his explosive and twitch. So that's always cool to see.
Yeah. And then tight ends wise, here I go stomping on your territory, but Curtis Hodges shown some flashes, but also needs to finish better. Had a
Yeah.
fumble,
Was
and
that
a
him?
drop
That was him.
yesterday.
Yeah.
So that was less than ideal. But you see the talent. I just think Turner's a better player at this point.
More definitely more consistent, I would say. You know, like
Yeah.
he's just like again, we talked about the consistency. He's a consistent, good football player with athletic traits that make you excited. So like
Yeah.
he's good. He's good. And Logan's
And
done a great job. So
that was what I was going to say as well. Logan Thomas has been all over the damn place,
Yeah.
and that is awesome. He looks really, really good. He looks healthy, and he doesn't, knock on wood, like not dropping anything. Like he's very sure-handed. He just seems like, as a human being, he feels reliable based off his personality, and it certainly as a player feels like he's very reliable. So that's been good to see as well. And then the last guy, Diami's had a really good camp. He's limited-ish in what he can do. Like he's not the most exquisite route runner, but he's fast as hell. He knows, like he is game speed fast. He has beaten a lot of dudes deep. And like today, you see him start to leverage that a little bit better and catches some easy comebacks. And, and if you're trying to move the ball down the field late in a game and, defenses are scared to get beat over the top, like you can steal yards with Diami Brown on a comeback route. And that's a really important guy and skill set to have in your offense. So that's good. Byron Pringle, I think, is also going to make the team. That's my last bold prediction. I'm just throw that out there. I think he's looked really good, made some plays, and obviously he's familiar with the offense.
Yeah, and I think
he might be the kick returner. So
yeah, and Bates had a nice contested catch yesterday. 2 nice contested catches yesterday. So I think you don't forget about John Bates catching the football. Yeah. Like he's looked good in that area. And obviously 9-on-7 yesterday, he was a dude at times, man, putting his face on people and being physical. So obviously that's still a big part of who and what he does. And then last but not least, I know you mentioned Pringle, and this guy maybe is not a true pass catcher, but Brian Robinson, dude. Like he has been catching the football great. Like he had one today on a wheel, great catch. One to the flat in the red zone that would have been a touchdown and probably a sack, but probably it was a touchdown in the drill, but probably would have been a sack in real life. Tough catch and made it look routine. So he's doing an excellent job. He had also one, like where he's running the seam, and this is a testament to Sam. I thought he's running the seam and Sam tries to put it on him, and it was an excellent throw. But you could tell B-Rob was like, I am not open. Don't throw me the ball. And Sam just darts it right at him. And so he doesn't even get his hands up. It kind of hits him in his shoulder. But I think great throw by Sam. But obviously he's still maturing. But in terms of catching the football, he's done a really, really nice job. Can't give him enough credit. And also his vision. We mentioned some of those team run periods. Like he had a power today, where everyone knows what power, pulling the backside guard, kicking out with the fullback, and he hits the backside A gap for what would have been probably like a 15-yard gain. Really sweet feet, great job. So everything kind of seems to be clicking for him, and everyone's really quick in the building. There is really quick to tell you, like, yeah, he's doing great, but last year he wasn't healthy. So this is him. This is finally we're getting to see the final version of him. So
yeah,
I just want to give him his flowers.
For sure. The final version of him, I didn't anticipate being a guy who can line up in the slot and run up the seam and catch a ball, but apparently that's part of his game. It's really fun to see. Gibson's also been, he's been Gibson, so that's been good too. But Robinson definitely deserves the flowers. Take Command podcast from Odyssey Sports. It's Logan Paulson. I am Craig Hoffman. All right, final segment here, Logan. We will go a bit hurry up, which is really more 4-minute offense type of tempo here, to talk about situational football. They've worked some third downs. They've worked some third and shorts specifically. They worked some goal line. They worked some red zone, high red and low red. Yeah. Yesterday was a bit of a disaster before they even got to the ball. Eric Bieniemy had to get them back in the huddle. Yeah, it felt like every snap there for a while to just say, like, hey, there's an urgency down here. There's a reason we move quickly. I asked Sam Cosmi about it, and he's like, yeah, man, like there's just an urgency about that area of the field that I think is part of it, but also we're trying to make sure that the defense doesn't have all day to adjust, and we want to get on the ball and we want to go. But once they snap the ball, what have you seen from them these last couple of days? Let's start with the red zone, and then we can go to the other situational stuff.
Well, red zone, I think is, I watched a ton of Kansas City film this last offseason. And one of the things about their red zone, again, is the tempo, finding plays that work and finding answers within those plays. And I think you're starting to see shades of that, kind of trying to manufacture relatively easy throws and relatively easy opportunities based on what the defense does. And I think you're seeing that. I mentioned the incomplete pass to Terry today. Like, that was wide open. And that's all scheme, route, design, so I think that that's going to be something that I'm really excited about. Again, the efficiency needs to get, one of the things about Kansas City is they're insanely efficient in those situations. They're insanely efficient in terms of getting touchdowns. I think today, like you see kind of the difference, like they're good plays. You got to hit on some of that stuff and it's not like they're missing a ton of throws. I'm not saying it was bad, but like, can they get a little bit more efficient? But the concepts are there. The philosophy's there. I think you have the players to execute that stuff at a high level. So I'm excited. Again, it's just to me about taking it from like a 5 to like a 7 if we can, and I think they're going to have more and more time to get that done, more and more reps. So I have no reason to think that won't happen.
Yeah, I think there's, again, the urgency of detail in that area of the field because the margins are, the NFL margins are slim all the time, but they're even slimmer down there. There's just not a lot of space to operate. And you see, I don't mind like talking about this play because it's basically the kind of thing that they did in the Super Bowl twice, right? Yeah. Where they use motion to create mismatches. And, it's not just like, jog across and now we've changed the strength of the formation. It's like, I'm going to sprint across and snap it. Or maybe I will sprint across, stop, and then snap it. Or like there's one, versions of it. And there was one with Byron Pringle today, which I think is interesting. A guy who was in Kansas City and has practiced this stuff before, where like he sprints one way, then is like, I'm going to slow jog back the other way. Just kidding. I'm sprinting back this way. And like, it's a race to the pylon. And there's those kinds of things that Kansas City's been doing for years that you'd certainly expect to be in this Washington offense that apparently have made the trip from Kansas City to Washington. But it's about the execution of the details, not about the scheme. Like it's only a win with the pen if the guys execute it right. Yeah. And so I think that has been really cool to see. Generally speaking, I think red zone today, the offense was fantastic. You had a bunch of guys score from a bunch of different places. There were run touchdowns, there were pass touchdowns, there were rollouts, there was drop back, there's everything. So that was really good to see. Third down. What have you seen in the third down periods? Because we know that's been a bugaboo for this team the past couple of years.
Yeah, again, you see some of the same philosophy, and I think that's important, and we can't get too specific on it. But, I like that there's options. I like that there's answers. I like that, most teams do this, but they're working different distances to third down. They have different plans. They have different plays. Like that, like there was a period last year where, it's 3rd and 4 to 6, Scott Turner's calling mesh, and they can call mesh as much as they want in this offense as well. But the fact that they have different formations, different personnel running it, putting some window dressing on it, I think just bodes really well. And I think they do a great job with, like they're not novel concepts, but it's just like knowing what works versus certain coverages and calling those plays. Like I'm not calling one play to beat all coverages. I'm calling, this is my cover 3 beater. This is my match beater. That's what I'm going to call. If we're getting pressure on 3rd and 8, I'm calling this play because it's got answers versus pressure, but I also like the concept to the right. You know what I'm saying? Like there's just a layering that makes you go, okay, they're thinking about this in a different way. So,
yeah, definitely. All right. That pretty much does it for this podcast. We do have Take 5 that we will have for you tomorrow as well. So a couple of guys that have stood out that might not make the headlines, might not even make the story, if you will, but deserve some attention. So we will talk about them in our bonus episode. That's why you subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss anything any day of the week when we might put out a podcast. Next week, got a couple of cool things planned. Not ready to talk about them quite yet, but obviously they will be training camp adjacent, different angles on camp as this team continues to get ready for the game against Cleveland. And I guess, Logan, our last big podcast of next week will be a preview of what to look for against Cleveland.
I guess so. Yeah.
It's already coming.
My boss told me today, he's like, which flight do you want to take on next week to get to Cleveland? And I was like, what are you talking about? That's not next week. He's like, oh, yeah, it is, dude. And I was like,
yeah, it is. Hall of Fame games tomorrow, bro.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's coming. Is it tomorrow or this weekend? It's whatever. It's soon.
Whatever. It's soon.
It's very, very soon. So if you have your restaurant recommendations for Cleveland, for Logan,
Yes,
leave them in
leave
the
it in the
comments.
comments. Yeah.
Cleveland's a fun city for a weekend. There's just enough to do for like 2 days, and then you leave. Especially when one of those is a football game. But yeah, we look forward to that next week. Take 5, subscribe, listen to the radio show 4 to 7 every day on the Team 980. Watch all Logan stuff on YouTube. Anything else on the way out here, pal?
I think that's it, man.
All right, the podcast is over. Thanks for watching this clip of Take Command. First, why don't you like it? It lets other people know that it was good, and then they should watch it too. And Logan, we have a new exclusive home for full episodes.
We do. 1067 The Fans YouTube page. Go check it out and please subscribe.
Yeah, do what Logan said.
Do
He's
it.
Very, very smart.